my belief is that we continue to march down this road with 100% effort, we will be in that world of only building the type of projects that we truly, truly want to be doing.
This podcast is brought to you by Andersen Windows. So we all know Andersen is a trusted name for windows and patio doors, but here's something you might not know. They also make impressive moving glass walls called big doors. And these moving glass walls can help you capitalize on the indoor-outdoor market, even in a rough climate. What's more impressive is that Andersen also has options for new homes and remodels. Their folding outswing door was recently used in a Michigan remodel where it opened up an entire wall of a 1950s era home. And in Minnesota, their 6-panel multi-glide door brought out the full beauty of a North Shore cabin retreat. These Andersen big doors bring the outdoors in during summer and provide ample views and weather protection in the winter. And with Andersen's proven track record and depth of support and training, installing them is easier than you might think. For more information, head over to andersenwindows.com/Modern Craftsman. Nick, I was just up in Connecticut last week installing a pivot door with Fine Home Building and Andersen. So keep an eye out for the content that we put together there. Real world, building a set, installing a door, sorting out all the details to make that process as seamless as possible for you. I don't know timeline on when that content is coming out, but super proud of that. Was a fun job. So keep an eye out.
Not to, while we patiently wait for Tyler's video to come out, we also installed some of their big doors. We actually went out to San Diego to their big door facility and used them on our Echo Pond project. You can see that project on the NS Builders YouTube. This podcast is also brought to you by Buildertrend. You know that feeling when a project's down to the wire and your client suddenly got a million questions? We've all been there, juggling last-minute punch lists, tight timelines, and trying to keep homeowners calm. That's exactly what Reclaimed Karma tackled in their latest webinar co-hosted with Buildertrend. Chris and Yvonne share how they manage client expectations during crunch time with communication strategies that actually work. Plus, they explain how Buildertrend's client portal automates updates with AI, so you can stop chasing emails and start focusing on work. If you're ready to finish the year strong and deliver a 5-star client experience every time, don't miss this one. Watch it now on demand at buildertrend.com/MC client webinar.
This podcast is brought to you by Harnish. First impressions matter, and your crew's appearance speaks volumes. Harnish Workwear helps your brand exude a commanding presence with custom branded gear that reflects quality of your craftsmanship. Their H-Label program delivers premium work apparel personalized with your logo, colors, and details. It's more than a uniform. It's a walking representation of your brand. Clean, consistent, and built to perform. If you're ready to elevate your image and stand out from the competition, visit harnishworkwear.com and start building your brand from the ground up. Which reminds me, I just had a package delivered from Harnish my side porch. Yeah, it came while I was out in the shop unloading stuff. Forgot that we got a delivery, and I just checked my email, and UPS says it was delivered. So I got to go check out what's in there.
Well, I know we are colder here in Boston already, and I got the Crater One pants and as well as their hoodie. And as you can see right now, I'm wearing the t-shirt because literally it's the only t-shirt that's in my drawer right now. I think I have 70 Harnish t-shirts, most of them co-branded with the Modern Craftsman or NS Builders. But the Crater One pants are super interesting, guys. And I think it's worth, if you guys are looking for something that is more modern fit, stretchy, but also super, super durable, but feel like you can wear them on the job site or, for my case, at the hockey rink 7 days a week with my children. They're pretty awesome. So definitely worth checking it out, getting on the website, and yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like too much crap going on, traveling a lot, not conducive to getting stuff done, which somewhat leads in to the conversation that I wanted to have with you today, where the past couple of years, well, I think that the dynamic in the podcast has always worked out well, especially with you and me and you, because what I do and what you do are so different. And I think that people get different perspective. And when people can't relate to me, they can relate to you. And when people can't relate to you, they can relate to me, where they should probably be landing somewhat in the middle of that, and they'd be in better shape rather than like polar extreme ends of the spectrum, right? Where I'm like, no, fuck it, I'm doing everything. And you're like, no, screw it. Like, we're going to build a model where we can scale and have other people do stuff. And I mean, I think in between might be a better way to go. But
Probably healthier.
I've owned self-performing so much. I've always referred to myself as a belt-on contractor. And then most recently, I've been looking at it from the self-performing perspective. I like the sound of that. I think that it's something people can really own, right? Like, I'm a self-performer. I think that's dope. Obviously, you're more of a tried and true builder or GC, but you came from a world that I live in now. So I think that there's a really interesting perspective and dynamic for the podcast between the two of us, being that we just live in two completely different worlds, and we agree on things and we disagree on other things. And I think at times we probably look at each other with rose-colored glasses and that the grass is always greener. But I think that we've done a decent job of staying in our lane and remaining true to that. So that's somewhat what I wanted to talk about today, just to ask you about where you came from, where you've been, where you are now, reflect on what my journey has looked like, and also just like what you enjoy about what you're doing today, what gets you up every day, and what you miss sometimes about being a smaller self-performer. So that's the idea for the conversation today.
Yeah, I feel like I've been asked this question a lot, and I think, recently, even actually, I think it's been over a year since I had a SWOT analysis done with my Builder20 group, but they had even asked, they were like, Nick, you have all these other opportunities, you could do all these other things, like just as career choices. Like there's and that's an issue with me, where it's like I grab onto opportunity and I try to ride that wave for as long as possible, but then realize like, hey, there's a wave over there I'm supposed to be dealing with. So I'm like, hyper focused on the fact that I need to not say yes to everything. But with that being said, there's other opportunities that I could make money, a great living off, and not, work so hard or take such big risks, and truthfully, be further along in life financially. But I think, the financial freedom, or the freedom to do whatever I want, or whatever, like however you want to define success, like that isn't really, I feel like out loud, that's what we communicate, what we want. But the reality is, like, if that was truly what someone wanted, everyone has the opportunity to do it. But there's the romanticism around what you truly enjoy. And you basically spend your life trying to find, how do I merge those two together? How do I take what I really love doing and I make okay money at, but then build the wealth and, and the financial freedom, at least that in my eyes. So
yeah, and I think a lot of the problem is you probably shouldn't do that. Like, you should leave your passion.
I don't think I agree with that.
So like, the issue is that you're going to, and you cannot argue this, you're going to concede way too much, because you're like, this is what I'm here to do. These are my goals. This is what I enjoy doing so much, where if it were just a transactional project, you'd be like, no, I'm not doing that for free. Like, I spent my time and my energy on that, and I need to be making money doing this.
But I do think that there's I think the reason people can't get to the point where they make great money at doing what they love to do is because of the difficulty of getting to that place in the first place. Where it's like, for me, if I were to think about like what I could do every day or what I could build every day, it would be the 45 white oak type projects, which is largely why we're building that, right? Like, so we can break into that market and say, this is what we do. And we have 6 other projects. They're all great, like great clients, great projects for different reasons. But if I were to, if I was like, if someone said, Nick, you can only do the stuff that you literally wake up in the middle of the night excited about, there would be a few of those projects that I would just let go of, because it's like we're doing it because we need the revenue, or we're doing it because there's a potential.
So you're exactly serving my point that what you really want to be doing is making you the least amount of money.
Well, yes, now. And I think that's where, and this is the optimist in me, where it's like, I believe that if I continue to go down this road of building this, product and this type of home, that it will break us into this market. And, I'm just going to own the fact that I'm just going to continue to relate everything I do to Bugatti, and just be like, I build a Bugatti of homes, like, because when I started this whole process, I had read, where I actually listened to the founders podcast around Bugatti, and I fell in love with the story, and I just went down this like rabbit hole of like everything about the messaging and the copy, and like who they are and what they do and how they build, and how they ultimately went from, I think it was the Veyron era for Bugatti, is they weren't a profitable business. And, but now fast forward, they build $5 million cars, they build 99 of them, and they pre-sell them. So they just like, they created this brand in this market for these one of one type, or one of 99 type cars, and people line up for them. So I think that, my belief is that if we continue to march down this road with 100% effort, we will be in that world of only building the type of projects that we truly, truly want to be doing. But I think that the period between starting your business and getting there, I think my experience
The
is
Bugatti was started in 1910, so you only have 115 years to go.
And they were, I actually didn't look at the profitability before the Veyron, but I think that was similar timing to when VW bought them, and it became like VW's like pet project or something.
Yeah, 115th anniversary. Well, no, I adore your passion for it. I mean, we have this conversation all the time, and it's obviously lofty, and sometimes I think that your goalpost is shifting more than you care to admit.
Well, it's not that I don't care to admit it. I think that I just am indifferent to that at this point, where it's like, I know I do have to remind myself. It's like, Nick, turn around, look what you guys have done. Okay, I'm like, that's great, but right now I'm like, I have to keep moving forward. To that.
Do you remember Scott Dom?
Scott Dom, I know that name. Yes,
DAUM.
Yeah.
He's like off Instagram now because he was just trolling everyone.
Yes.
I still talk to him from time to time, and I messaged him last night, and he was asking about you and how you're doing, and if you're still looking to take over the world, and that from what he remembers, you were like a marketing genius. And I was like, yeah, dude, if I made as much money as Nick made, I would have been retired already. The problem is Nick spends 2 times what he makes. And I had that conversation, like obviously joking around, but it's you're
probably pretty close.
Like you're just always chasing and chasing and chasing. I mean, that's what makes you.
Yeah, I know. And it's, I just had I was on, before this call, I was on a call with my business coach, and one of the things we were chatting about, he's like, hey, I want you, like, next call, I want to strategize about what you're going to, if you end up selling when you end up selling White Oak, like this influx of money, because you've invested for the last 2 years into it, like you're going to have this return. What's the plan with it? I just want you to think about that. I'm like, oh, I already know. It's going to come in it's going to come in my bank account. It's going to go right back out. And he's like, I need more clarity around that. And I'm like, understood. Like, it's because I think this is to your point, and what you said to Scott, it's like, if I had just done things and then taken the profit, like when you go, like, I'm not a big gambler, but when I go to the casino, if I win, I put that in my left pocket, and then I keep playing with the chips that I brought. And in business, everything goes in my right pocket, and then I just like keep playing with them. And sometimes I have none, and sometimes I have lots. But so similar to, yes, like my goalpost is constantly moving, but it's funny because I think I sent it to you, and then Doug sent it to me yesterday, and it's this meme of a cat just like laying on its back, and
Oh yeah.
it's just like, you ever wake up at 3 a.m. and kind of just want to give it all up and move into the woods and in a cabin? And
Yeah.
I was like, Doug, it's funny you sent that to me. He's like, oh no, he wrote, I'm blowing up his spot, but he was like, haha, just kidding. Dot dot dot. I mean, kind of. And
I think we all have
I
those
was like,
days.
Doug, I'm like, I think about that every week. Like, there's nothing when I get up to New Hampshire and when this tiny little 600 square foot cabin, every time we're there, I look at Meg and I'm like, we could live here. She goes, I know. Our life would be so like different and simple and like I'm like the fact that we could just like coexist, six of us in a 600 square foot log cabin and be totally okay with that. I love that. And I have this grand vision of, speaking of being built on, is when we finish our Boston home, which I actually do plan to swing the hammer on some stuff on that. Like I just want to,
Yeah.
and there's stuff that isn't like hyper schedule critical. Like right now, I have a couple guys going to help me on the outside because I need to get scaffolding down, and I know I won't have the time. But on the inside, I can pick away at stuff. But when we finish that, and that's our primary residence, I want to build the house up in New Hampshire, and I want to be like, I'm going to buy a Tyler excavator and like
Hell yeah.
gonna own that just so I can dig a foundation, and I want to panelize it and stand it up, and I just want to build like that will be my hands-on like project that just becomes this passion house.
Yeah. So what about your job and what you do now do you find is the most enjoyable aspect of that? Like where you are right now?
I I think it's the ability to bring people along and buy into the vision of just like wanting to build cool shit with cool people.
Do,
And
do you sorry, go ahead.
no, and that like that's it. I mean, there's definitely parts that I wish I could do more of, but when I think about, hey, why not just do one project at a time, reduce down to a solopreneur and do the social media stuff and make a living that way. It's like that's a very viable thing I could do. I don't want to. And people are like, but why? I'm like, because I really like building a team and everyone buying into this bigger vision and building these projects that are just it's just passion. It's like guys guys pull me aside on projects and like, Nick, I just want to thank you. Like, I said this before, but this guy literally pulled me aside. I was like, I just want to thank you for allowing me to come to this job and do my very best work. He's like, I haven't had that opportunity in years where it's like I'm just told, hey, you get 3 days to get this done. You said, hey, I want this to look the best that you can make it. And I was like, that's why we do this.
Yeah. And that's hard to argue. Do you think that that's always been the motivation even when you were belt on? You just weren't fully aware of that? Because I always felt like I know when you first started, you had friends working for you, and then I think that ultimately a lot of the people that you parted ways with they didn't have the same vision, but it always seemed as though you were trying to get people on board to
Mm-hmm.
buy in.
Yeah, I think it was always the vision. And it was always the intention. I think I thankfully realized early on that I was never able to 100% focus on one thing at a time. So, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, like one of the first projects I ever did, there's actually a few details in that house that I'm like, yeah, I rushed through that and it came out like shit because
Yeah.
I didn't take my time to do it because I was probably thinking about the fact that I need to go home and price a project or go and, finish up another project. It just, I never was able to kind of click into that gear of just, hey, I'm here from 0% to 100%.
Yeah, so for me, obviously I enjoy performing the work, but there's certain aspects of the work that I don't, and I think that as a belt on contractor, the most satisfying days for me are when as long as I don't have people sitting there waiting on me to keep them busy, because that just stresses me out. But like figuring out how to make something come together, whether it's a layout, whether it's just something that I don't do every day, whether it's picking people's brains to understand how to get from A to B the most efficient way possible. For me, that's the most enjoyable. It's almost once the work's about halfway done, I start checking out because I'm like, I got this licked at this point. Now
Yeah.
it's just connecting the dots.
I'm a terrible closer. Like I'm just, it's when we get to 90%, I'm like, all right, let's focus on the next thing, which was actually, something that was recognized um, in when we complete projects. People are like, dude, I followed this build online for 2 years. Like, did you ever finish it? I'm like, yeah, we finished it. Like, there's literally no photos or video of you finishing the job.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I was on to the next thing. And that is something I recognized. And the going back to like the hands-on or like the manual labor aspect of it, as foolish as it sounds, I'm emptying out 2 floors in my house so we can start renovating, and there's just stuff everywhere, and I'm like, I'm gonna put my headphones in and I'm just gonna pick up box after box and move it in the truck and then drive the truck and then unload it box and box and put it in the storage unit. And there was something like therapeutic about that, where it's just like, it's up the stairs in the truck, stack it up next. And it's, if I did that every day, sure, I probably wouldn't enjoy, like, I know I wouldn't enjoy them as much, but the ability to click into stuff like that, or even like we're up in New Hampshire, and I mean, the step on our outdoor shower broke because it was literally a piece of like springboard that was nailed as a tread in 1983 that rotted through. So I was like, oh, I got a piece of pressure treated 2x10 over here. I'm gonna rip out my skill saw and cut it and put it in. I mean, 7-minute task, but it was just like something like, I click in and it's just like a therapeutic. It's like, man, I enjoy this, and there's times where I do miss it, and the ability to, kind of click in and out of that, I think, is what will always, encourage me to go back to that.
Please tell me that you're referring to a diving board when you say springboard. What's
No,
a springboard?
springboard is like a rough sawn 1x8 that they use to spring and string a wall when they're framing.
Oh, okay. Never heard of that before.
They,
But I was
they
like,
up,
does he have another weird term for something that like people would call something else normal?
like a bubbler. Like apparently that was
Yeah.
wrong. No, you know what a springboard is, though, right? When you're springing and stringing a wall.
I mean, you just told me, but I didn't know
All
that
right.
that's what
So
it was called.
if you were framing a house and you had a 40-foot wall, how do you make sure it's straight?
String lines, and then
Yeah, but how do you move it in and out?
I don't even know what I would call that.
But would you do a diagonal, or so the 1x8 goes horizontal and you nail it to the underside of the top plate, and then
Yeah.
you put something vertical in it so it basically bends, and that's how you move
Yeah.
the wall in and out. Nowadays they have screw jacks.
Yeah.
And I think most of the time a lot of that ledger board, then gets turned into like fascia stock that gets wrapped in aluminum.
Yeah. No, we've always just used 2x.
Yeah, so then you're just like you're pulling that section in. The problem with that is it's like hard to fine tune.
Yeah. No, I mean all our bracing is always 2x.
Yeah.
But that makes sense. Interesting. So you always learn something here on the Modern Craftsman podcast, even on this side of the conversation. So
Hey, if I'm wrong, please share this and put it on your story and just call me out, because that's how I've always known it, as springing and stringing.
no, that makes sense. I've just typically it's 2x. I remember the one edition we framed, they braced so much with 2x, and then there was one guy's job who was and they used so many nails. It's insane how many nails they use, where it's like, dude, if I was putting up temporaries, it'd be screws all day long. They spent basically half a day. One dude's job was just pulling all of the bracing and strapping and just pulling nails out of it and then sorting it. I was like, I have almost a shed worth of lumber that you had me buy just for bracing this edition. Do you think that you gained or lost anything when you decided that I'm going to take off the tool belt?
Well, yeah, I think that you lose the momentum behind process because when you aren't in it, you are replacing people. Like you're replacing yourself with people. And I think especially junior level, you're essentially you make mistakes, you learn from them, you apply that to your process. You hire someone, they're going to likely make the same mistakes, and then they need to learn from it. And I see a lot of people fail because they're expecting the people that they hired not to make those same mistakes when, like, dude, 2 years ago you did the same thing. They haven't crossed this and dealt with it yet. So I think we lost a little momentum with the process around, especially around quality craftsmanship. Quickly made up for it and then like surpassed where I ever was.
Yeah, I think even from from a management perspective, at least for me, it's really hard to execute at the level that I can when I'm hands on because I'm forced to go through all of the details and all of the motions. Once there's somebody who's going to step in and own something, I have so much other things going on that I just want to let them do their thing. And it's a really difficult balance between I'm going to let you do what you have to and trust you, and also ensuring that we get the details right, or even just making the mistakes to know what to look out for when you're managing, right? Where you hire a subcontractor, and if you're not asking the right questions or you're not checking the right things as the progress goes, as you progress on that project, you don't necessarily know what to look for. And then when it comes time for the next trade, you possibly miss something. So I'm always of the mindset, and there's people that have not done this, but I'm always of the mindset where it's like that belt on experience is critical and vital to being a great manager. And I know that that's a blanket statement that's not correct for everyone. There's people that don't, but for me, I wouldn't be able to manage anyone or
Mm-hmm.
delegate had I not done something with my own hands first.
Well, to relate that to our side, there's a big difference between a project manager and a site super.
Yeah.
In residential, that word sometimes can mean the same thing, but for us, we run more like a commercial company. So project manager is behind the computer managing the project, document control, schedule, budget, contracts, things like that. A site super is on site, and when we are interviewing a site super, we definitely value the hands-on experience or the ability and or desire to throw the bags on when necessary.
Yeah.
Like that, I mean, it's not we don't rule it out if they've never swung a hammer, but you definitely got a leg up if you have. And if I open the back door of your truck and there's a tool belt back there, it's like, yeah, you're the type, because what that says to me is like you're a type of guy that gets shit done.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like there's a gray area of carpentry, no problem, guys. You keep moving, I'll handle it. Like that.
But
That's huge.
You still, especially in residential, regardless of what level you are, it's so helpful to understand how the budgeting, the schedule side of things interacts with the site work and vice versa. And I feel it's so difficult as is to manage a project on any level,
Mm-hmm.
but without consideration and understanding how a decision in the field impacts the schedule and the budget, or just from a communication standpoint, and also how something on the back end of a business, as with what a project manager would have a discussion with a client, how that decision is affecting people in the field and making that come together. Like for me, it's so much easier because the communication is between myself and the clients.
Mm-hmm.
I don't then need systems in place to be able to relay that effectively, efficiently, and accurately to a team. So I think that's a huge struggle for people, and something that I personally would lose if I pulled the tool belt off, because I've just never done it enough to understand how to properly and effectively communicate that to everyone else to ensure that expectations are met and aligned.
Yeah.
Like it's so hard. I even say from a kitchen design standpoint, right? Where it's like, if you want to design kitchens, how have you never installed a kitchen, and how do you know what to look out for,
Mm-hmm.
where the pinch points are, what you're going to struggle with, what your decisions, how that's going to impact people in the field, from as simple as just like, how are we going to move this cabinet from one space to another,
It's
or how are we
exact.
going to fit this between walls while there's casings already on there. It's just silly things like that that I think are relatable to any project on a greater scale that I think that belt on experience gets you.
Well, it's exactly why people value experience in their decision making when they're hiring a builder. It's why we lose projects to people that have been doing it for 40 years, because a client looks at someone that's been doing it for 40 years as, oh, they already have uncovered all of the issues and know how to react to it. That very well might not be the case. There's plenty of guys that have been doing it for 40 years that basically, act as though they've been doing it for just 40 times over.
Yeah.
But that is the reality. Like, people look at experience as, oh, then you have been through enough to know, how to maneuver that cabinet. You have installed enough cabinets to know that you can't get away with no fillers, because that drawer is going to open and slam into the hardware. It's like, you've made enough mistakes to learn from them, is essentially what, that notion is. And I think there's certainly weight to that. And I think where we counteract it from our side is, that's why we put so much emphasis on the pre-construction. I'm not saying that, hey, do pre-construction and you'll never have a cabinet drawer open and slam into hardware. Like, hey, been there, done that. Like, we had to rip out cabinet and redo it. But the value is that you are taking the time to essentially understand how a project goes together and gets built, because you're going through that motion. It's on paper, but it's exactly what helps you understand the project to a higher level than just, that's the design. Okay, I can go now put it together.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I've looked at design or even gone through pre-construction and created a budget, and there's still things that you miss.
Yeah.
Even on the project I'm on now, right, with like the screening system that we're using and what the architect drawn up and what actually has to happen to make it work. And they're two different things. And I think that I can make it work between budget and materials and everything else, just because I've made up some money on the budget in other areas. But it's impossible to capture all of those details real time and then understand how that applies to the field work. And I think that I'm obviously better at it than I was when I was younger, and I have more experience now. And when I do manage subs, I understand how to manage my subs, what's important, what are the right questions to ask. But I still think that that's somewhere where I would struggle, where it's like, hey, scale your business to 5x what you're doing now. I think it would manifest itself in that way between the systems and the communication to make that happen, being that I'm so used to performing things at the level that I'm on. I think that what you've done, the direction that you've gone, I believe allows you access to jobs that I wouldn't be able to complete, regardless of how expensive you are. When you think how much time it would take me to complete a larger scale job, there's just too many hours going in. I'd need to bring more people in from a time perspective, from a labor perspective. And I think ultimately that drives the price down, and then it's up to you to manage to meet that expectation and the level of quality. But in order to gain access, a lot of times, again, a blanket statement and not always the case, but to afford yourself access to those type of jobs, you have to have a business that's substantial enough and has the appropriate systems to be able to handle a job of that magnitude. Like, I can't just go do a $3 million build because I'm really good at one-off projects that I'm self-performing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't have things in place to be able, and I could do it. It would take me too long and it'd cost way too much money, because that's not what I'm set up to do.
Serving the general market, yes. But I mean, I would argue that there are people out there that would spend, like Tyler, just come and work on my house and
absolutely. But when you look at like the grand scheme of things, where it's like, hey,
you're not wrong. Like, this is why efficiency, like Spencer Lewis, talks about, being a one-man show and finding efficiencies. You could probably put him up against a 5-man crew trimming out a house, and he'll probably do it just as fast and probably better. And because he looks at every opportunity to create efficiency. Until you build a house, you're going to miss those efficiencies the first time, maybe even the second time, where it's like, oh, I didn't realize that, when I'm building this, I could actually be installing floors on the first floor while the painters are painting the second floor. I thought I had to do all the floors, then wait, and then have the painter show up.
Yeah.
And and those are the things that's what I mean. Truthfully, I think that's why being in commercial construction or even development construction, like track building, I think there's removing the quality issues that a lot of those track homes face, just the ability to see so many phases of construction start and stop on a repeatable basis, I think is huge. And I forget who said it. We talked about this on the podcast years ago, but it's the ability for a super to go in and see 30 foundation starts in a year
Yeah.
is
That could be
so
someone else's career.
exactly like there will be supers that never see 30.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the ability to know, like, all right, what were the things I needed to do for those footings to go in? Like, what did I need to make sure was in place? Because I don't have it. I'm putting 30 in. If you don't figure it out on the first, second, or third, you better fucking figure it out on the fourth.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, it's like we put a foundation. Our homes take 2 years to build, and one super runs that job from days one to day 800. And it's like, and they get to see the footings going once. So by the time they get 2 years later onto the next one, they gotta go back and be like, all right, what did I have to prep for those footings?
It's true, especially when your hands are on every aspect of it and you do learn a lot and you learn a lot from your mistakes. But there's something to be said for going through the motions every single day, even just by chance. I did a deck for a buddy of mine, and then we framed this screened in porch edition. I framed it. I didn't hire somebody to do it, and just getting my feet wet, framing the deck and altering the frame and fixing the frame on my buddy's deck got me back in the mode of all of the little things that I do. Even just like if you're putting in blocking, or you're going to be running some sort of blocking, like to leave stuff in your bracing an inch and a half low so that you can get your blocking in, not have to cut it in between every single thing. Just little things like that you realize on the second one that you just did that you forgot about because I haven't framed a deck in 3 years, right? I'm just not doing that every day. And you think about the efficiencies that you create by doing 30 foundations, where it's like, dude, you could do that stuff in your sleep.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're not going to hit every single critical detail, but that's not what people are paying for at that point.
No, I mean,
they're paying.
I think of like Tim Mueller, like, the efficiencies that those, awesome framers have figured out in terms of framing their home. Like the router, with the handle on it that they just blast through the windows.
Yeah.
It's, how much easier that is. And not to mention like how much better of a product you get than, well, let's ignore the Sawzall, pretend that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But like cutting, measuring, trying to cut that with a skill saw, make sure it lines up. It's just, those are the things that you learn as you do it over and over and over and over. And, and this is the whole mindset around, 1% better every day. I had this conversation with Julian the other day. I was like, we were talking about, we have another super interviewing for us and is currently working for one of our big competitors. And he came and he was interviewing with us, and he talked a little out of school and kind of gave us a little intel of what's, not working at this other company. And Julie and I like sidebar at the end. I'm like, how is that company operating their business this way? And, and he was like, this is insane that they continue to take work from us, but that's how they run the business. That like this, it's so like, and he's like, our process is way better. I'm like, not only is our process way better, but we are of the mindset of being 1% better every day, where it's like, all right, this works, make it better. This works, make it better, make it better. And
not becoming complacent.
Right. And these guys have been in business 40, 50, whatever year, how many years. It's like, it just, basically their mindset is, it is what it is. And it will take what it takes, and it costs what it costs, and you'll be happy with it.
Do you think, you mentioned that you'd love to be able to build your house up in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Do you think that you are able to maintain or get the same level of pride doing what you're doing now, building these homes, as you would building something more modest, having your tool belt on?
Yes. Yeah, I'm incredibly proud of the role that I play and the role that everyone plays into what we build today. Like let's talk about the staircase that someone told me to stop posting about. It's that staircase is, I mean, it exists because it was designed. It exists because I decided to go for it and then convince everyone to do what it took to build it. It exists because I forced it into existence, but it also exists because the framer framed the stairs correctly. The plasterer plastered it, took the time to plaster it correctly. The finish guy, or the handrail guy took the time to CNC it. The finish guy is hand stitching the veneer on site. Like, I still play a role in that. There's hundreds of people that play a role in that. So for me, it's like, if I had been the guy that veneered it or framed it or plastered it, that doesn't change how I feel in terms of, being hands-on. I still consider that being something that I helped bring to life. You know, I also don't necessarily think what I build in New Hampshire will be modest because I'm building it. I think I'll still, I mean, maybe, who knows? As of right now, like, my intent is not to be overly modest. I like pushing the envelope of things, and that will continue to be how I build, I think. I mean, it's certainly for like our primary home, you know, we could be super modest and have a wonderful life and a beautiful home that is probably going to be more enduring to 4 young children. But I kind of want it to be magazine worthy for 2 weeks before we move in. So
Sure.
it's like, I'll do things that are pushing the boundary. But that's who I am. I love art. I love art. I love architecture. I love materials. Like, those are the things that I have grown and continue to grow to appreciate on a deeper level than I even really knew about 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Do you do you think it's more challenging to put all of the pieces together in the sense of even just this handrail, right? You're dealing with a designer, you're dealing with a framer, a plasterer, a handrail guy, somebody doing the veneers. Do you think that it's probably more work or more difficult to put all of those pieces together with so many different people rather than just one person handling everything?
No, because I think it's the exact same way that someone would do it if it was one person. If someone was like, "Hey, you have no outside responsibilities, you are taken care of financially, you are going to be here, and I want you to go from zero to complete on the handrail." And I think that that person with obviously the right skill set would approach it and understand, how do I accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish here. Oftentimes, I think people can't accomplish it because they don't slow down and take the time to figure out how to do it. They're just like, that's going to be hard. The veneer is a great example. I There was a half a dozen people that were chattering, some of them like checking in, that weren't even involved in the project, saying, I literally don't understand how anyone's going to be able to figure out how to veneer that handrail. And I'm like, what are we talking about, guys? Everyone's like, it's just going to be super complicated. Like, there's no way you can do it. I'm like, can't you just, I mean, I'm dumbing this way down. Couldn't you take a piece of paper and wrap it and make a big template and then cut the veneer and then fit it? Or run it long and use an X-Acto knife and cut it and slowly fit it in? I mean, both of what I just said would work. You just, oh yeah, but that would take forever. It's like, but you would accomplish it. You're saying there's no way to do it. and adding this caveat that it has to be done in a certain amount of time.
You're also comparing it to what has been done before or what would be quote unquote normal.
Right. And then, you know, Keith, one of our carpenters, shows up on site and he starts setting up, and he's literally making a template with, I think, RAM board or something. And then all of a sudden cuts the template, cuts the veneer, had that whole thing veneered in 5 days. Like,
So
and you, like, cool as a cucumber. Just like, doo-doo. Like,
I guess I look at it and like I'm definitely simplifying this, but it would be similar to saying, "Hey, I want to bake a cake, right? I'm going to make all those decisions and make the cake and deliver the cake for somebody versus I want one person to create the recipe. I want someone else to shop for all the materials. I want somebody to mix the wet ingredients, someone else to mix the dry ingredients, somebody
sure.
to put in the oven, someone to take the temperature, and then somebody to frost it, and then a person to deliver it. And for me, the way my brain works is like, it'd just be fucking easier for me to do it all myself, right? Like, to me, the challenge is bringing all of those people together and having the communication, the expectations
That's
aligned,
project management, right?
and also making sure that everyone has enough stake in that project to not get to a point in that cake to be like, I don't give a fuck what the frosting looks
Well, I
like.
think
Like, I don't like this aspect of it. So why do I want to have any
Mhm.
stake and ownership in this?
So two things. I found an amazing account. I love the analogy around cakes, because this account basically, everyone's like, oh, baking is an art, and his whole account premise was, hey guys, I'm here to prove that baking isn't an art, and if you follow the instructions exactly, anyone can bake anything.
Yeah.
And he would literally be like, I have no baking experience. This is a carrot cake. Let's do it. And he would sit there and he'd make a carrot cake, and it just took time, followed the instructions to a T, and the thing was perfect. But to your point, I think the thing that's the biggest challenge in what you just described is the buy-in. And the buy-in comes when there's a shared vision and the respect for how to get to that vision. And oftentimes this is a unique situation where it's our project, it's our development, we're taking this massive gamble, and we're saying, hey, you're here to do your very best job. Let's flip that and say we're working on a client's home, and it's like, hey, this is the intent, and you have this many days to get it done. There has to be that expectation set up front, because it's like, well, someone might say, there's no way to install this handrail in 2 weeks. It's like, understood, as designed, probably not going to happen. Let's work together and find something that does, get as close to the vision of the architecture for this, or the design of this handrail, within a 2 week span. And, but get them to buy into it in the sense, like, everyone's on the same page. Everyone has the same goal. And and I find that on our jobs, that is the difference between our jobs and other jobs, is that all the trades are there because they believe in the bigger vision, and they understand that the expectation around quality is number one, and sometimes that it makes for a challenging project, or a project that we have to be really cognizant of budget, or or maybe that we have to have a serious conversation of like, hey, you just simply don't have the budget to pull this off. So we can do a version of it, and we can either simplify what we're doing, or we can reconsider how we're doing it, or have a different level of expectation. The Echo Pond project's a great one, where I can't remember if we talked about it on here, but I showed up one day and I'm looking at the shingles and I'm like, this place looks amazing. And one of the guys was like, what do you think? I'm like, it looks amazing. And I don't want to come off as an asshole. Why is this taking so long?
Yeah.
And he was like, he kind of was, he was like, I was like, no, just walk me through. Like, I'm not here to tell you you're doing anything wrong. I would love to understand why it's taking so long, because I had a different expectation. And he was like, oh, well, we thought that when we started installing the mega shingle, we thought we could just install them with factory edges on 3 sides. But come to find out, the plywood, the discrepancy in the squareness of these sheets was 1/8 of an inch. And when you're gapping things 1/8 of an inch between shingles, that's 1/4 inch sometimes. So it would go from tight to quarter. And I'm like, and he's like, so we end up cutting every single shingle to make sure it was square. There's 540 shingles in that house.
Yeah.
4 feet wide. So this is track saw, one guy,
How big's your strapping that you're going on to?
2x.
All right. At least you have some wiggle room there. That would suck if you have to cut all them and you're going on like 1.5 inch studs and you're like, now my whole
Oh
layout's
no,
off.
it's the shingles are actually, yeah, the width. Yeah, that's a great point. But the width doesn't matter. The strapping is horizontal
Oh, okay.
because behind the horizontal is your vertical. Great point.
Yeah.
But so all that to be said is, well, this is we're going over on time, which is a budget bust, which is a difficult conversation with the client. But going into it, at the end of the day, the expectation around our projects is that is important. Meaning, if it had gotten installed and not fixed, and we just accepted the fact that the plywood wasn't square, the end result, looking back when it was all done, would have been the thing that stood out the most. Is like, man, like, it's not perfect, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Where it's like, now you show up, this house is 100 feet long, 540 shingles on it, and you walk up to it and everything's an eighth of an inch space. Like, that's impressive. And the, and that's a hard thing to sell to a client. And obviously, if there's costs attributed to that, where it's like, hey, do you want to spend 20 grand more and we'll have all the shingles be perfectly spaced eighth inch, or do you want to just leave them square? It's like, like, sometimes that's a hard
That's a
conversation.
cost that after the fact you're 100% on board with, but before you're like, does it really matter?
It's actually, I mean, it's similar to when we did the house with Steve Teague, that roof, the swooping roof.
Mm-hmm.
That was something, unfortunately, for a handful of reasons, we didn't really understand the complexity of the framing of that roof because we were under construction while they were engineering the roof. And then it was almost as though we were locked into doing it. And it ended up being a very expensive roof because of the way the structural engineering was. And I remember the client saying, if I had known that the roof was going to cost X when we signed a contract, I would have eliminated it.
Yeah.
But now that it's
that's
done,
what makes it.
she's like, but now that it's done, I'm glad we did it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we didn't have that option back then.
I think that's very common. I think that's common in my life. That's common with so many things that I do. And no matter how many times you've been burned or made the mistake, it still happens again and again.
Totally.
Where it's like, should have just bought a new one. Should have spent the extra, $5,000. But, it depends on when you're making a decision, what else is going on in your life, how important it is to you, what your experience is like that, how somebody's communicating. Dude, whatever the aspects of that decision are that are going to completely determine what you're deciding on.
Right. Think about when you bought a house, like how stressful that process is. Right. It's like, you're buying a house, all this, like, it's just all this money in your account, then it's gone. And you own this house, it's super stressful. How are we going to afford this? Blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you buy it and you're in the house and you're like, yeah.
I do it now. Like, they wanted us, the size detached building that I wanted to put on our property had a eave height that was higher than zoning would require. And they're like, do you want to get a variance? And I don't want to get a variance. I don't want to spend money on a variance. I don't want to change the design. Like, I don't want to go through that process. So I'm just like, no, I'll just make it smaller and I'll drop the ceiling heights. And I'm like, is this something that I'm going to absolutely regret or like dormer down the road? Mm-hmm. Because I'm not happy with it. And I feel like I probably am going to be, but I'm still like foolishly going forward. Just be like, I'll just make it lower. Whatever.
Dude, we're doing the same thing right now. We just finished our basement. Like, we got all the slab put in and we're going to move up to the next level, which is the rental level. And Meg's like, can we get the laundry room down there? Like, she wants this Speed Queen. Like, it's like her dream to have the old school Speed Queen. And I'm like, well, I'm not sure yet. She goes, what aren't you sure about? I'm like, well, I might rip out all the floor framing because it's only, our building's 17 feet wide and 30 something feet deep, right? I might just rip all the floor framing out and reframe it and put a new subfloor in. And she goes, well, why wouldn't you do that? I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't really need to. I could just like flatten the floor. It's a rental, I'm not going to really gain much other than it being new and perfectly flat and squeak free. She's like, I feel like you just kind of have to do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know, but I kind of just don't want to.
Yeah.
And it's the same. We were going to dig down the basement 2 feet and get basically like a 9-foot ceiling in the basement. And, it was, I don't know, I think it was like 35 grand or something like that. And I'm like, I'm not going to do it. I'm like, I'll probably regret this later. But I was like, but what's the space? The space is literally a kid's room, like a spare room, a bathroom, and a kitchenette that is off of our parking area. Like, why do I need? It's not like
ceilings in your basement.
Yeah, it's not like we're going to be hanging out down there watching movies. And if we are, like, we're laying on the floor with the kids. It's like, let's put the 35 grand into something that we actually will,
It's just tough because you're like, I don't know what position we'll be in down the road that maybe this 35 grand weren't as much of a big deal as it seems right now. Like, you don't want to make the wrong decision.
And I was like, just get the concrete in, please, before I start digging. And so we place a slab, and I'm like, all right, this is it. And then it's like, we look at our living level, like the living level, which is above grade on the street. We got 12-foot ceilings in there. That's amazing. That's where we're spending our time.
Yep. And that's where you're spending all your money on utilities.
Yeah.
That should be better once you renovate it. So what do you think is, like, what have you learned about yourself as your roles changed over the past 10 years from being someone who was closer to my position to where you are now?
What have I learned?
Yeah. What have you learned about yourself, like, that you feel is significantly different than who you were before, or what your capacity is?
I have learned that I have way more capacity than I thought, and willpower, but it has compounded my need for focus. Where I think before, when I was in the field, it's not that I could focus less, but it was just it seemed
you're forced to focus.
I'm at this point in time, like, I feel 7 days a week I am only focused on progressing and getting to that fictitious goalpost, where before I feel like I could properly and actually disconnect, because it wasn't so important that I continued, like, I made progress every day, because like the progress would be made when I returned, and that was the expectation. Right now, there's this, innate feeling that progress has to be made every second of every day in order for me to actually get to the point where it's all right. Here's the ROI on 2.5 years of plowing through like the difficulties, and I need to get to that point where it's paid me back in some sense.
Yeah. I think similar. I mean, there's been a lot that I've learned about whether I've had employees, whether I've scaled back, whether I'm self-performing, subcontracting, and I think that ultimately the biggest lessons are just finding happiness, peace, comfort where you are, understanding the lane that you live in. I think that we're not permanently bound to remaining in one lane in life or business, but I think that it is important. You can change lanes, but don't live in multiple lanes at once, right? Mm-hmm. If you want to be small, be small. If you want to try and scale, but don't live in multiple lanes. Don't serve all these different markets. Like, figure out what works for you. Spend the time and the effort and the focus on that one lane. And then if it doesn't work, you can always change lanes. You can switch lanes. But I think that there is a lot to be said for picking a lane, owning that, and making the best of that, and trying to live in that lane, that same lane, because like success doesn't look the same for everyone. Mm-hmm. What you make doesn't look the same for everyone. What buys you happiness, what gives you peace, what, works best for you and your family, all things considered, like, everything could be the same on paper, and what works for you just doesn't work for me as a personality type. And there's just so many different variables to that. So I think it is important, right? Like where you were and where you are now are two different things, but it's just about staying focused and remaining on course and trying to get up every day feeling that you are where you're supposed to be and working as hard as you can and creating a life that not only now works for you, but in the future is something that you're proud of.
Yeah, I think finding that lane and sticking to it to completion, like that's something that again, my focus tends to be to wander. And I, you know, anytime I've ever actually implemented like deep focus on a particular task, I've made significant progress on it. And I continue to revert back to this kind of ADD style of, seeking opportunity in, multiple areas. And it's terrible. And it's, partly why I hired Caitlin as my assistant. I was like, I need you to focus on the stuff that just is the incoming and filter it and bucket it like this is priority for you. These are your top 3 action items for the week. Get this shit done. And then we can go to, priority number 2.
Yeah. It's to all of our listeners, obviously Nick and myself, two different people. I think that we give you guys a very diverse perspective. What Nick does, not necessarily right or wrong. What I do, not necessarily right or wrong. The goal for us is to give you insight and just a peek into who we are, what makes us tick, what our lifestyles look like, what our goals are, and you make a decision based on that, or at least you have some sort of perspective as to what the decision may look like, or what your life might look like, what your responsibility might look like living in either one of our shoes. Again, no right or wrong. I think it's just be proud of what you're doing. um, Surround yourself with people who want the same as you, and just get up and put your best foot forward every day, and try to be the best father, husband, wife, friend, business owner that you can be. And every day is a new day, and you have an opportunity to make a change if you need to.
Yeah. And if you guys want more insight on this, like make sure you head over to moderncraftsman.co, sign up for a newsletter. I every week I get in there and I share something that is actually happening in my world, my life, typically around business and just something I'm passionate about. And sometimes it's, struggles and sometimes they're big wins. And it's also where we're sharing a ton of the stuff that we're putting together in terms of just valuable content for you guys to implement and help build a better business. And as Tyler says, a better life. We'll see you next week.